It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host this morning and every morning. We're going to cover a number of topics today. This is the third in our 4 segments. We were on our new 2-hour format this morning. So I brought you to the awareness, and I teased you with the news that the NSA has actually had the unmitigated gall to come out and say that it would violate your privacy to say if we spy on you. Really? I mean, that's incomprehensible, isn't it? Let's just analyze that for a minute. The NSA says publicly that it will violate your privacy to say if we spy on you. Really? This is a story in Wired magazine. Now, Wired magazine is no tinfoil hat organization. This is a very credible and reputable organization, and they are in the high technology arena, so they spend an enormous amount of time. In fact, this is in their subsection called the Danger Room. The Danger Room. Why? Because these are technology-oriented and minded individuals who run, create, and put together the content for this magazine. And that's what they spend all of their time working on. Gear, science, business, security, design, video. And they're classifying this as a very dangerous place for us to be. So if you don't want to take it from, your hillbilly neighbor or the guy who you think is wearing a tinfoil hat, then take it from the people who are on the inside of this technology world and hear what they have to say. Spencer Ackerman wrote this story. Let's read it. The surveillance experts at the National Security Agency won't tell 2 powerful United States senators how many Americans have had their communications picked up by the agency as part of its sweeping new counterterrorism powers. The reason? It would violate your privacy to say so. Okay. So here's your boss asking you how you have violated the rights of the people that he represents, and you actually have the brass to turn around and say to him, I can't tell you because if I tell you that would actually violate their rights. Are we forgetting who's boss of whom here? You see, these administrative agencies have gained such enormous power through the usurpation and abuse of our system that they actually believe they are in control, and Congress answers to them. Now, Congress is 100% complicit in that misanthropic idea that they have, because they have allowed them, through their own malfeasance and their own spineless refusal to stand up and take responsibility for their role and their place in our society and in our government, that they ultimately are responsible for this behavior. Like a petulant child who continues to scream because you don't correct that child, this agency, among many thousands of agencies, now feels that Congress is has no responsibility at all to answer to Congress. Like the petulant child who tells you to shut up. These administrative agencies need to be slapped down hard. That claim, I'm reading from the story here, that claim comes in a short letter Monday sent to civil libertarian Senator Ron Wyden and Mark Udall. The two members, these are both Democrats, by the way. Mark my words, the Republicans are the ones who are leading this charge to betray you. So never, ever, ever call yourself a conservative again. Going forward, you are nothing other than a patriot. Because that differentiates you from these people who want to conserve this status quo and allow this virus to spread. The two members of the Senate Intelligence Oversight Committee asked the NSA a simple question last month. Under the broad powers granted in 2008's expansion of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, that's FISA, how many persons inside the United States have been spied upon by the NSA? The query bounced around the intelligence bureaucracy until it reached Charles McCullough, the Inspector General of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. He's the nominal head of the 16 U.S. spy agencies. In a letter acquired by Danger Room, McCullough told the senators that the NSA Inspector General, quote, and NSA leadership agreed that an IG review of the sort suggested would itself violate the privacy of U.S. persons. You know, I've just about had enough of this kind of doublespeak, circular thought process mentality that goes into these people's answers. This is an absolute outrage. And, you know, Congress has the power to subpoena, and they have criminal authority to conduct criminal investigations, and they're sitting on their hands. The same thing with Benghazi. Last night, I watched Greta Van Susteren, and she had that monkey Karl Rove on there, who sat there and said, no, the House is doing good work. We should allow them to continue. The only plausible thing that I agreed with that he actually said is that if they do require an inspector or a special prosecutor, the problem with that is that the Department of Justice is the one who has to appoint that special prosecutor. And we can't trust Eric Holder to walk our dog, much less appoint a proper special prosecutor who is actually going to accomplish anything. He's going to put one of his sycophants in the role, and this thing will get buried for the next 3 to 5 years. That's the only thing I agreed with under Karl Rove's argument. You see, that is not the purview of the Department of Justice. That, ladies and gentlemen, should be the purview of the committee who's actually holding the investigation. Choosing an inspector general and a special prosecutor should not be open to the Justice Department, because the Justice Department works for the executive. And if you're investigating the executive and their actions, then you got to assume, logic tells us, that Department of Justice is going to protect the administration, doesn't it? So here's the rub, and here's the problem. The only way to really get to the bottom of this is to accomplish it in this fashion. For the committee itself to appoint someone, and not just one prosecutor, multiple prosecutors, and handle this like an actual criminal prosecution. Why multiples? I'm going to tell you why. Because 1 is corruptible. 2 is corruptible. Even 3. I want watchdogs of the watchdogs of the watchdogs of the watchdogs. And you should too. The simple truth is this. We no longer have a rule of law in this nation. And the only way in which we're ever going to get it back is to change the rules and the way they apply. So we shouldn't be asking Congress to do anything for us. We should be demanding what Congress will do. And right off the bat, the first thing that they ought to do is take back the power of investigation, criminal investigation. They need to appoint a prosecutor themselves, not through the Department of Justice. There are plenty of federal prosecutors that could handle these cases. And those prosecutors should be separate from the Department of Justice so that this administration can't do a CYA and cover its own rear end. You see, we have grown so lazy and so apathetic, and Congress has allowed itself to be so marginalized that they don't even have any power anymore. They're like the parent who's got an abusive child who sits there and tries to make excuses for the child. Well, ma'am, you got 2 black eyes, and you're not married, and your son is sitting here with that nasty smirk on his face. Yes, but he's a loving boy. Is he really? Then why do you have 2 black eyes and no teeth left? The simple trouble is this. Congress has been abused for so long, and they've been so compromised, and they've so capitulated to the tyranny and the whole principle of it, that they're unsustainable and unsupportable and indefensible. Every single one of them needs to be removed permanently, forever, for lifetime from office. End of argument. I can't say with certainty that I would even honor and respect the concept of keeping 1 or 2 who appear on the outside to be stalwart preservers of the republic. I can name a couple: Cruz, Mike Lee. You know, those guys are out there fighting a good fight. But even that, I have to say, I have significant and sincere doubts. Not because they don't appear to be doing the right thing, but maybe they just got a really good marketing team. I don't know. And so, since we don't know, we can't pick and choose and say, well, this guy is good and that guy is not. The simple solution is we remove them all, and we put in place, under a plan of succession, a group of individuals who are citizen legislators. And we demand and back up with a written contract. And if they violate the contract, the liquidated damages are that they are immediately ousted from office. That way we don't have to put in a recall petition. How simple is that? We make them sign a contract. If you want to run, you sign a contract. Here's what the contract says. If you want our support, this is what you got to sign. If you violate our trust, then for all intents and purposes, by that violation, you have broken the contract and you are therefore removed from Congress as liquidated damages. That's it. Contracts are upheld by law all the time. And liquidated damages and waiver of rights are upheld by the courts every single day. Common law and treasonous law. I mean, federal law. Yes, that is treasonous law. You see, the real problem here, America, is that what you've got is a group of people out here who are so far outside the boundaries of law that they don't even have an inkling or a concept anymore of what it really means to be representative. They're operating for their own personal egos, their own aggrandizement, their own financial future. And you are just a means to an end. You're a tool. You're a pawn to be used. The only time they give a damn about you is around election time. The rest of the time, they completely and abjectly ignore you. So the question is, where are you going to come down on this? When are you going to stand up and say, I'm calling a halt to it, and I'm not going to play? That's the only requirement. You just got to step out. Get off the merry-go-round and say, you're not willing to ride anymore. If 10, 20, 30, 50 million Americans said, we're not going to play anymore, this whole thing would come apart, and we would thwart their plans. Not like Margot Rubio says, let's commit a crime before the president commits a crime through executive order, like I just addressed in the first segment. That's idiocy. I'm talking about saying, we're not going to play. We're not signing up for your hub. If you continue to treasonously betray us and build dossiers on every American, every one of you that is guilty is going to be penalized under treason, under a charge of treason. Every one of you. And make it stick. No compromise, no fear, no sorrow. Stop paying your taxes. Stop paying your banknotes. Stop the system. Stop the motor of the world. What is that motor? Money. Without it, they're done. Without it, it comes apart. But you continuously feed this animal knowing that it is devouring you, your family, and your children. I don't know what more proof you need. It's everywhere around you. You are completely and 100% encircled. You know, Chesty Puller was famous as probably one of the greatest fighting men of all time. And there's an old anecdotal story about him at one point where he was asked to give a situation report to his commanding officer. And he reported back by radio. He said, "Sir, we are 100% and completely surrounded by the enemy. However, we can attack in any direction, and they can't get away from us this time." That, ladies and gentlemen, is the difference. We are 110% completely surrounded. The enemy is thick as fleas on a rabid dog. We can attack in any direction. They can't get away from us. Don't you get it? The number one way to attack is to stop the flow of money. That's all it takes. Just bow out. Just get off the ride. Just stop feeding the beast. Massive, peaceful, civil disobedience. On a scale the world has never seen. Don't we, as Americans, have the courage of our convictions to stand up? Aren't we the greatest nation that has ever lived in the history of the world? Is this not the most unique government that was ever created and founded and put into practice? Are we not the great America that we believed ourselves to be? If we are, then the answer is simple. We collectively say, we're done. We stop. We're finished. Yes, I'll lose my job. Yes, my company will shut down. Yes, I will lose my car. Yes, I will lose my house. Yes, I will probably lose my 401k. Guess what? You're going to lose it all anyway. Their goal is to take it all from you. So either you're going to, and the truth of the matter is, if America just stops and seizes the motor, it won't be long before this entire thing will capitulate. And when the pieces get picked back up by true patriots, you will be restored. Your home will still be the place that you live. They can't foreclose and kick everybody out into the street. That car that you got foreclosed upon, guess what? They can't take it. They can't take, 20, 50, 100 million cars? What are they going to do with them all? I mean, really? What are they going to do? Imprison 50 million Americans for failure to sign up for Obamacare? Imprison 50 million Americans for refusing to pay their taxes? I mean, let's do the math here for a moment. We have the numbers on our side. And make no mistake, this is an us versus them situation. They are, in fact, the enemy. They are. You can deny that to yourself. You can say, I don't want to hear that kind of talk. But let me tell you something. They've declared war on you. You're sitting here allowing it to be unilateral. A war is bilateral. If it's not bilateral, it's called genocide. And that's where we're at. So it's time for you to recognize who your enemy really is. Know your enemy. Know yourself. Take the appropriate action. The simple truth is this. America, we don't have anywhere else to go. We can't slide any further down the halls of tyranny. It's already here. We're already embroiled in it. The NSA is building databases on every single American. If you can give me one good, legitimate, valuable reason from your perspective, not from their perspective, I know what they're going to do with it. But I want you to think about giving me one valid, legitimate piece of value that you as an individual will get from their having a dossier and a database built on you. Find me one reason. If you can, send me an email. I want to see it. You can send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org. That's mike@americasvoicenow.org. I challenge you to come up with a legitimate value that you will obtain from this massive surveillance that's being dragged across America like a net. Don't tell me it's your security. If you believe that fallacy, you are so gullible. I've got oceanfront property in Arizona that is ready for you to purchase. You have an infinitesimal chance of being killed by a terrorist attack. In fact, the truth is, more Americans die from bee stings every year than from terrorist attacks. More Americans drown in their swimming pools than die from terrorist attacks. More Americans die from falling off ladders than die from terrorist attacks. So if you believe that that is actually the case, that you have some amazing value to this government, that really all of this is about keeping you safe, why do they have to keep it indefinitely then? Ask yourself that question. Ask yourself who's got access to it and why. Ask yourself, what is the benefit to you? Do this like a cost-benefit analysis. You wouldn't invest without some confirmation that you are going to get your money back, much less a profit, would you? So why would you give up your personal security, your privacy, for what? What are you getting in return? You're not even guaranteed that your private information under the data hub is secure. And we know it's not secure under the NSA. We know that the NSA has been sharing this information with the DEA and other federal law enforcement agencies for domestic law enforcement purposes. And that is absolutely outside the scope of their promise that this was for national security. So I ask you, what do you stand to gain by this? The possibility that you'll be safe? Is that the risk you're willing to take? Trust me, these people who are in power now, while ultimately the Islamic extremists and the fundamentalists that you fear want to turn this into a global caliphate, and I don't agree with that either, I got to tell you, if you really look at it, Washington, D.C. is a lot closer to the finish line than the caliphate. So, who should you really be fearing? If you've got two people out there trying to kill you, the one who's closest is the one you fear the most, isn't it? And what you have to recognize is that Washington, D.C. is literally within arm's reach, and the Muslim extremist is somewhere way down the road. They're not even in sight yet. So just look at it from that perspective, and it should all become abundantly and painfully and obviously clear to you. There is nothing about what is happening in the United States of America today that bodes well for you. Not one thing. Our economy is in ruins. Our global reputation is destroyed. And now, this beast is turning back to devour its own young. Find us at americasvoicenow.org. Find us on the web at facebook.com/americasvoicenow. Find this and every other show that we do up on YouTube at youtube.com/americasvoicenow. We're going to cover a fourth segment in just a few minutes. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to hit some other issues. We'll be right back.